Welcome to Business Amplified with host Kevin A. Dunlap.
This podcast is for small business owners aiming to amplify their enterprises.
Explore strategies to play a bigger game by becoming an author, public speaker, podcast host, or expanding your brand in other ways.
Elevate your business on Business Amplified.
Good morning, everybody. This is Kevin Dunlap with Business Amplified, and again, thank you for being for listening to our show today. Today, we're going to have a guest. He was a referral from one of our earlier shows from a gentleman by the name of Sean Douglas. So go ahead and definitely listen to his show as well. But today we have a John. I'm going to try to pronounce his last name. It's John Renken. So,
good job,
John. Welcome to the show. If I mispronounce your name, please let us know how to pronounce it.
No, you did well. That's pretty good, man.
So, John, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What is it you do? And why is it that you do it?
Yeah. So right now, there's 10,000 people getting out of the military every month. And many of them are being offered jobs after 20 years of war for about $20 an hour. It's a crime. And so what I do is I run what's called a skill bridge program, where we take them, teach them sales skills, and then get them hired from anywhere from $30 to $60 an hour. And that's what we're doing right now.
I will say that I'm ex-military myself. But however, I got out back in 1990, so that was over 30 years ago. Do you work with veterans as well, or is it mainly just people who are making the transition?
Yeah, so the Skill Bridge program is for anybody, whether they served or not. And I served in the 90s as well, got out in 96, and we didn't have any of this kind of stuff, right? They basically gave us our DD-214 and said, don't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out. And the reason why this program is so important for both the veteran community as well as the transitioning military community is that the civilian populace hasn't really understood who we were and what we bring to the business world, and how we could actually help their sales teams or help their marketing teams or even their operational team, right? And so it's free for all veterans, all military, and the whole goal is to teach them that there's a world out there in sales and business that they don't have to take the devil's money anymore.
And I was saying, because I got out back in July of 1990, and obviously this is pre-internet, so quite decades before the internet came out. So there was nothing out there for us. I know for me, I got out and I ended up becoming a bartender at Red Lobster while going to college. So I used my GI Bill to start to go ahead and get my bachelor's degree. But yeah, there was nothing back then. And I mean, granted, that was more than 30 years ago, but yeah, there was absolutely nothing there that was about veterans, helping them to make the transition from the military world. And for me, I was overseas, so I was living in another country, to come back to the United States as well as make the transition into the corporate America.
Yeah. So a funny story, when I got out, they did this resume class, which they just basically told us to take all of our military stuff and put it in a line item format. It was horrible. If you understand how to write a resume now, you know how bad of an advice that was. So I put in there, because I was a younger soldier, but I had done a lot in my stint in the military. So I did airborne school, ranger school, EIB, all that kind of high speed stuff. And everybody was like, oh man, they're just going to give you a job whenever you show up because you've done so much stuff. So I put Ranger School and the leadership principles from Ranger School, all that kind of stuff on my resume. And it was at my first job interview where I realized nobody knew what the hell they were talking about. So the employer is looking at my resume and he's like, oh man, this is great. He's, talking, and he goes, so what forest were you in? And I was like, what? He goes, what forest did you serve in? It says you're a ranger. I was like, no, I was an airborne ranger, like military. He goes, oh, you weren't a park ranger? And it was at that point I was like, holy shit, nobody in the military knows what they're talking about when it comes to coming into the civilian world. I mean, this guy didn't even know.
And I've seen that quite frequently, not only that, but also in the federal government. because the military, as well as the federal government, loves to create these acronyms. I mean, that's
Yes.
they're all about the acronyms. And the thing is, if you have not experienced that yourself, then yeah, you have no idea how the
None.
civilian populace has no idea when a federal or a military person gets out what they're talking about because they cannot relate to it. They have no
Yeah. So
idea. Now, if on a slim chance that maybe they were a previous military person, or if they were a previous spouse or child of a military person, or they were actually a federal themselves, then maybe they have a little bit of an understanding. But yeah, making that this is called a translation. It's like because it is like a foreign language. Making that translation to the civilian population can be very difficult and challenging.
yeah, so what's really made this easier for us as a tribe of people is ChatGPT and all the AI movement. We literally
Yes.
teach these kids now how to upload what they've done in the military, their military resume, their military stack, and then send that into ChatGPT with, hey, I'm going into uh, finance, Kevin, right? So I'm going to tell ChatGPT, take everything I've done in the military. Here it is. Know that I'm going to work for Kevin at financial institution A. Rewrite my resume and tell me what I should be telling Kevin out of my military experience in Kevin's language. And it does it in like 5 minutes.
Oh, yes. Oddly enough, I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine, an ex-girlfriend of mine, actually, and we dated back in 1999 or 98 going into 99. So it's right before the Y2K crunch, and she's a federal employee in the law enforcement arena,
Oh,
and
okay.
she was talking about making a transition to another organization that was also in law enforcement, and she was talking about she had no idea how to write up a resume, especially a federal resume. And I told her all about like, go ahead and write up, what you think you need to have in your resume, and then go to ChatGPT and have them to revise your resume for the other position.
Yep.
Because
No, it
yeah,
works well.
yeah, it works very well. I mean, because I've been playing around with chat for about a year now, as of the time of this recording, and I've used it to create resumes. I've used it to create online courses. I even had it create a brand new menu for a restaurant with
Nice.
descriptions as well as the names of some great drinks that will be for that particular venue, and then what are the ingredients of that drink? Or you need 2.5 ounces of rum. You need it's AI is one of the greatest tools out there, and the fact that you are using that, you're capitalizing on that for today's military is phenomenal. Thank you, and thank you for doing that.
Yeah. It's so funny you said you used it for restaurant and drinks. I make mead on the side. I love mead. And so I've done an entire business plan with ChatGPT on how to market mead, how to name it, I mean, it's probably done 1,000 hours of work for me on my mead brand.
I think he probably did in like less than five.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like that thing does amazing stuff. It translates Excel sheets and like it literally saves me 10 days at a time.
So the thing is, if, for you guys getting out of the military or and making any kind of transition, start using AI to your advantage. Because you may say, I've never thought about even using it. I mean, I've heard about it. I don't know how to use it. The thing is with AI, it's the main thing is it's known as a prompt. So or you can basically say, what are the commands that you want to give it? And if you give it the specific enough commands, it will start giving you the content or at least the outline of the content that you can start using.
You
Now,
can
I
even
would
tell
never
it to,
say use everything that you get, and that's going to be your
right.
final product. But the thing is, it puts you on the right road.
Yeah. You can even if you're not good at the prompts yet, you can insert whatever it is that you want it to do, right? Give it its structure, and then it will spit out whatever it spits out. And then you can come back to it and say, hey, I named my ChatGPT Bob. I say, hey, Bob, tell me what else you need me to prompt you to really fill this out and make it as robust as it can be. And then it will tell you what it needs you to tell it to be more profitable. It's crazy.
Well,
So
but like I said, I've been using it for more than a year now. And when I started using it, it was mainly like to write a blog. Write a hey ChatGPT, write a blog that's between 500 to 700 words on blah 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 subject, highlighting blah blah blah, whatever it is that you want to highlight, and then it will write it out for. Now you got to go and put in your for us people in WordPress, you got to, well, this is gonna be a header 2, this is gonna be a header 3. You have to go and put that stuff in so that you are optimized for SEO. But the thing is, and that's how I started using it. But then I started a meetup group, and I said, you know what, I want to have a training on how to use AI as a business coach. So I'll have it actually write out the outline for for a 60 to 90 minute course. And then I would use that and then I would even give it not only the outline, but then the outline as well as the subcategory. What am I going to talk about? Then I started using it for, hey, maybe if I wanted to get a job in something, well, and here's the previous jobs that I had as a right, give me 5 to 7 bullet points on being a lead census field manager for the U.S. Census Bureau in 2020 in Las Vegas, Nevada, and they gave me out that
Right.
content. Like, it's like, so then I was like, wow, I can get even more specific. Then I had some people show me that, hey, if you in one particular chat, this is kind of what John was talking about. You give it a prompt and then it gives you the results. Then say, well, revise this and make it even more deep. And you can give it like 5, 10, 15, even 20 commands and just in one prompt because the chat or Copilot or whatever the Bing one is going to give the content that's already created to go ahead and give even more details.
Yep. Yep. It's a powerful tool. Do you know who Bill Burr is?
No, I do not.
He's a comedian. He's got a whole section on AI and AI robots. It's funny. He basically is saying, as none of us ever watched any sci-fi movie in history, he's like, we're asking robots how they feel about things and goals. And he's like, oh my God, these things have goals. Unplug it. It's going to kill us all. And when you look at what it can do, it's like the next Skynet.
I was going to say that as well because I mentioned Skynet quite a few times. And for those of you that don't know what Skynet is, because if you're not a geek or into sci-fi stuff, that is where the Terminator was created.
Yeah. We're dating ourselves.
We are dating ourselves. Actually, I'm going to go off on a little tangent there. In the first Terminator movie, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, that when Sarah Connor, when they call it, and the answer machine picked up, for Sarah Connor, and made the joke, then this is not me, this is just an answer machine. That was the first time an answer machine was ever filmed on camera.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes.
Well, it's funny. I think it was Arthur C. Clarke that said the science fiction of today is the science of tomorrow. So Terminator came out in what, 80 something?
84. 84.
So if you would have asked anybody, Elon Musk just released his promo video for this. If you would have asked anybody in 1984, is it possible to have cyborg humans or robots that are artificially intelligent? And everybody would have said no. But Elon Musk now has a robot they're releasing next year that can do all your household work. It can do laundry, it can cook, it can do chores, it can babysit, and they're talking about selling it for under 20K.
Wow. Well, I'll do you one better. Let's go back to the 1960s. Okay, so we're going to go back 20 years before that, and there was this TV series called Star Trek.
Yeah.
So how much stuff did you see in the original series with Leonard Nimoy or Bill Shatner, which where they're talking on their communicators, which we now call cell phones. They have these remote scanning devices, which we now have. So the thing is, science technology is just a vision of our actual future. So. So John, tell us a little bit about your business as well as what got you so excited about helping veterans.
So first of all, I'm a veteran, right? And I'll tell you, so I got out in 1996, And then I went to college, moved back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, started working for Special Forces, was doing all their combatives and stuff like that because I was an MMA fighter. And I did that from 2000 to 2020 until COVID hit. Then I, obviously, teaching people how to fight you can't do if you can't be within 6 feet of each other. And fifth group was super gracious and kept us around for a while. But, at some point, you can't just keep paying people to sit at home. So I went back into sales, which I've pretty much done my whole life. And in May of 22, Fort Campbell, Kentucky called me, said, hey, we want you to consider starting a skill bridge program. And I was in this weird place in my position at the company I was in, which is, I love that company. It's one of my favorite places I've ever worked. And I have great clients that I work with, but I was really missing that military connection because most of my clients did not serve. And then I had a friend in February of 2022 say, well, why don't you just work with military clients? I'm like, well, I don't think there's enough military that does sales. And he goes, well, why don't you go look? And so I did. And I found out that there was 415,000 veterans on LinkedIn doing sales. So then Fort Campbell came to me about the Skill Bridge program, which didn't exist when you and I were in. And I'd never heard of it. So I said, let me go check it out. And, but they said one thing on that phone call that just really upset me and was what really got me where I'm at today, which was the average man or woman getting out of the military. So we're not talking about, a nurse or a cyber or an IT specialist or, whatever. Just the average person that comes into the military that gets out is making $20 an hour. And it just infuriated me. We've been at war for 20 years. Take, everything else off the table. The lessons in leadership and stress management and conflict management from 20 years of fighting a war is worth more than $20 an hour. It doesn't matter what field it is. Right. And, and that really upset me. But then when I saw what it took to become a Skill Bridge program, I came back to him and I was like, there's no way in hell. That is so much red tape. It's a 2-year process, unless you get a congressman to fast track you and all this kind of stuff. I said, but I'll network somebody in, I'll bring them in. And that's actually how I got started where I'm at today.
Okay. Well, I know when I went in as an E3 into the Navy. And I went in, and what at that time was one of the most prestigious parts of going into the military was in the nuclear power program. Mm-hmm. Now, I did not finish the nuclear power program. However, I did become an E4 on my first ship and then E5 on my second ship. So within 3 years of entering the Navy, I was already an E5. Yep. And that's pretty quick. I mean, I was probably one of the youngest E5s on my ship because I started off as an E3 and got promoted the first times. And I was actually going up for E6 when I got out.
Yeah.
So, but for me, my skill set, I mean, I worked in the on my first ship in the engine room. I was a machinist mate, and my second ship I worked in what they call A gang or air conditioning and refrigeration. So I was responsible for all the, making sure all the mess decks all had the freezers were all working. I worked on the chill water pumps so that the people in combat had, they could cool off their computers and stuff like that. And that's what I went in. When I got out, I felt, I wanted to go to college, but I felt like, there was nothing there for me to aid me. That's why I became a bartender. And even to this day, I still, here it is 30 years or more later since I got out. And I still feel in many cases, there's not much out there for veterans.
There really isn't. And, so here, a lot of people don't even understand this portion of it. So a veteran, whether they're white, black, Asian, whatever, is a minority protected class. And many companies are actually in violation of the labor laws because they're supposed to be hiring a certain percentage of veterans. But where do we hear about that?
Right.
Right? We don't hear about it. Now, in the Vietnam era, I was just talking with a gentleman yesterday, and he talked about how difficult it was when he got out. He was a Marine when he got out because of the culture towards the Vietnam War. Today, we have a culture that's very supportive of the military. Left or right, it doesn't matter. Most people, at least verbally, are supportive of the military, but we're not seeing that in the employment sector. And I think it's a lot because of education and resources.
And also, a lot of the military. I watch any news show. It doesn't matter, if you're watching left wing or right wing. But at some point in time, there's going to be a veteran commercial come on. Like, hey, are you? Did you suffer from Agent Orange? Were you at Camp Lejeune? Were you?
Yeah, right.
And all the stuff that a lot of the military people are subject to. That is the regular civilian populace is not, unless you're maybe the spouse of the military that they no, you're saying about being in a war, but they are putting their lives on the line.
Yep.
I mean, I remember when I was 19 years old, and we were escorting the tankers, the oil tankers, into the Persian Gulf. And I remember I was in the engine room. This was the scariest day of my life. I was probably 19 years old, and I was the one controlling the amount of steam going to our engines. So, I'm the one, saying how fast is it? The bridge is telling us, hey, go standard speed, and then I'll make the adjustments to the forward engine to do that. And then I'm now wearing headphones, and I'm there, with the bridge. I'm with the second engine room, and by the way, the propeller is right there. The shaft for the propeller is right there in front of me. I mean, the ship is going to my left because the propeller is going that way. But I know I'm looking at a throttle board, a board of gauges, and behind that board of gauges are our engines, our front engine and our back engine. And then I remember, I hear one of the lookouts through my headphones that I see something in the water. Now back then they were mining all the canals. They're trying to blow up the oil tankers, and this was between Iran and Iraq before the Gulf War. And then I get the signal where it goes full steam forward, full steam backwards, full steam forward, stop, which means stop right now, hit the brakes as hard as you can.
Right.
And I'm listening to this like, okay, I've got to turn on the aft engine while controlling the front engine. At that time we had 1,200 pounds steam. If we went down below 1,080 or went up to 1,320, that boiler would kick off. I have no more control over the engine. And so I'm hearing this, I've got to stop this ship of hundreds of people. And by the way, I'm below the water level. So if we hit a mine, there's about a 1 in 2 chance I'm going to be dead within a second. And I got to stop this ship.
Yeah.
So here I am, I'm closing the front engine, which is a poppet valve system. So, so you have to close it a lot faster. That the aft engine is just one poppet. So I'm opening that one up very slowly while also, while doing that. And I see that the other engine room is trying to do the same thing that I'm doing, because they were the aft engine room.
Yeah.
So they got a much shorter shaft, because our shaft goes through their room. So I'm in the forward part of the ship.
They don't do that way anymore, do they? Because now it's all nuclear power.
Well, the thing is, the engine room goes from port to starboard. So if you have a shaft, it's going to go through. If you got a 2 shaft or a 4 shaft, those shafts have to go through the aft engine rooms, because the propeller is on the back of the ship. That's all there is to it. And regardless if it's nuclear power or not, you still have to have somebody that's going to be at least in control there, or at least trying to maintain. And I remember that, like, if I don't stop the ship now, we could be dead, and the chance of me being dead is like 1 in 3.
Yeah, man, shoot, that's nutty.
And again, this was a 19-year-old kid that was responsible for this entire ship to stop.
Yeah, man.
And but they don't. But somebody in the civilian populace is not going to really understand that.
No, yeah, because life and death's hardly ever in their hands, hardly ever. But it is in ours, even at a young age.
Even at a young age. I mean, any Army or Marine guy, I mean, they're going to be on the field. They're going to be in combat. The bullets are actually going over their heads. I was on a Navy ship. We don't have that. That was at least one of the things that I was fortunate about. But the thing is, we had our own, different things that we had to go through.
Yeah, yeah. It makes for an interesting story in the civilian world, because many military don't know how to convert that experience with stress to business, and the civilian world surely doesn't know how to handle it. As a matter of fact, I've had them ask me numerous times, what's the chances that, this person's going to have a PTSD episode in the middle of the workplace? And I'm like, I don't think it works that way.
No.
So it's just kind of an interesting, again, after 20 years of war, we've got, I don't know what the number is, but we probably have somewhere between 1 and 2.5 million people that have been in Afghanistan or Iraq or Africa in combat, right? In some capacity, whether they were in the Navy or the Air Force or whatever. So.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I'm not sure if it was Sean or somebody that came right around this time, but he was talking about being a first responder.
Yeah.
And it was, and then I remember, well, I was on the emergency crew in case there was in case there was a fire or something on the ship. That it was during that interview, that's like, oh my gosh, I was a first responder,
Right.
because I remember one time on my first ship. And we will have drills. So they go, okay, general quarters, all hands up, man your battle stations. Fire oil, a lube oil leak in the #1 engine room. General quarters. This is a drill. That's how it would normally say. It's kind of like red alert on Star Trek. And I remember this one time. We got to it was considered good that we got to our duty station within like 2 or 3 minutes, fully ready. And I remember this one time I was just hanging out in the berthing area, which was for the engine room. It was on the back of the ship. And we said, we were general quarters. We have a lube oil leak in the or whatever, a fuel oil leak in the #1 fire room. General quarters. This is not a drill. Like,
those are the words we don't want to hear, right?
Never clear. This is not a drill. And I remember, like, we were considered like good to. I would say 3 minutes for us to be at our battle stations. By adding that one word, not. I think we got there like in 1.5 minutes.
Yeah. Oof.
But here's the thing about the life on a ship. You either fix the situation or you abandon ship. I mean, there is no retreat.
No, and I don't think a lot of people even understand that about the military. Our options are either get it fixed or everything goes really wrong. Like,
Yes.
and it doesn't matter if we're talking Marines, Navy, Air Force, Army, right? Like when you're in Afghanistan or Iraq or, Africa, because we did before 2016, we had some pretty heavy operations in like Syria and Africa. So regardless of where you're at, there's only a couple of avenues here. There's only a couple of choices. And if we make wrong decisions, lots of people get really messed up. And that critical thinking under duress is such a valuable skill set in the business world.
It is because you have to make good decisions while under pressure.
Yep. I was just going to say, I tell everybody, well, at least nobody's shooting at you.
Well, I don't know about this day and age, but anyway, I digress.
Depends if you live in Chicago, maybe you're getting shot at.
Or Detroit, or
or Detroit, California, or New York,
So let me ask you this, because you've been doing this only for a small number of years. What have you seen has been some of your biggest challenges, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so our probably our two biggest challenges is that because the company's actually been around longer than I have. I took over the SkillBridge program from another gentleman, Raleigh Wilkins, who founded it, and then he passed away in July of 2022. the biggest challenge has been probably learning how to give away stuff that's super important. And you have to learn how to delegate and trust other people to do important stuff. Because when you're trying to grow a program, I can't be everywhere at once. And so that's been the biggest struggle, is balancing when to delegate, when to pay, when to do this, when to do that. And then the second is, which you'll get a kick out of this because you actually served, you know how inefficient the federal government is. There's no centralized place to go for information. And there's no centralized place to go to find the people that might be interested in you or the companies we're working with. So I have to go through a search every 3 months to find people who are interested in business and sales, because the federal government has no system to funnel them to programs like mine. So they came up with this miraculous idea, and it's a great idea. It's one of the few ideas, I think, that the federal government actually had an idea of what they were doing. But then they have no process for implementation. So it's like, oh my God. So even in their great decision-making, it's super not efficient. So those have been some of the biggest struggles.
Well, I can attest to what you're talking about. No offense to the VA, that's Veterans Administration for those of you that don't know. So no offense to the VA, but yes, I mean, they sometimes they do put together programs. Sometimes in local areas. I know here in Raleigh, North Carolina, there are some stuff where they want to work with people, but their marketing making of telling people that this even exists is very, very, very lax. And then they often make it overly complicated.
Always. And I tell people this, and the thing about the military or federal government is that it's a socialist society inside a capitalist society. So the federal government operates inside of itself as a socialist society. You're told where to be, what to do, how to think, what to eat, what to wear. And then inside that structure, you have people that have to, on paper, come up with justifications for why their position exists. So they front load it with all this complexity that doesn't really need to be existing. And you actually see this play out when you're like, dude, I outperform this dude every single freaking day. Why is he making the same amount of money I am? It's because it's a socialist society. And so instead of doing things the most profitable or the most efficient way, the federal government does things the socialist way, which is let's give everybody their shake. And it too many chiefs and not enough Indians, or I don't even know if we're allowed to say that anymore. Probably somebody get upset, but too many cooks, not enough eaters or whatever.
Cool. Yeah, well, I definitely understand what you mean by that, because yes, I mean that is so true. But well, I'm not even go down. I'm not even go. We don't have enough time to go down that down that path. So John, if somebody wants to learn more about your program, you call it a Skill Bridge, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So if somebody wanted to learn more about you, where would they go and how would they find you? Do you have a landing page? Do you have a calendar appointment, a website? Could you share a little bit more about that?
The easiest way to get in touch with us is mysalesplatoon.com. It's mysalesplatoon, like the military organization platoon.com. On there, you can book appointments, everything, or you can find me on LinkedIn, which is linkedin.com/John Renken.
Okay, so go to linkedin.com/in/John Renken, was JOHNRENKEN, or and what was the other website with the word platoon in it?
mysalesplatoon.com.
So mysalesplatoon.com. So John, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience before we go?
Yeah, if you served in the military, whether it was in the 90s like us or it's been in this current conflict, just know there are career paths out there for you that don't require you to work for 20 bucks an hour. Know your worth, get paid what you're worth. And if it's not at $30 an hour, don't even think about it.
Back when I was a college math teacher, I did that in the early 2000s. one of the things I realized right before I got hired, I had a phone interview. Says, okay, we're going to pay you 18. Okay, that sounds great. I hung up the phone, and then first I thought about 18,000 a year or $18 an hour. Like, they weren't very clear on that. And then that's when I realized back in 2000 was that we all normally work, and this is just simple math. I'm just going to give you some very simple math. Is that the normal person works 40 hours a week? Would you agree?
Yep.
At least right now in the United States, the normal work week is 40 hours per week. There's approximately 50 weeks in a year. There's 52 technically, but let's say you get 2 weeks vacation. There's basically there's 50 weeks in a year. Well, what's 40 times 50? Well, 4 times 5 is 20, and there's 2 more zeros, so that's 2,000. So whatever your hourly wage is multiplied by 2,000 is what your annual wage is. So if you're making $20 an hour, that's $40,000 a year. Basic math, really basic.
Before tax. Before tax.
Before taxes, and before we take all the other stuff out. So your gross income is $40,000 a year. So if somebody offers you, say, hey, because I would ask my students this. This is back when I was a college math teacher. I would ask my students this, like, what is a good wage per year? Oh, they'll say $60,000. Okay, very good. What's a good hourly rate? They go $20 an hour. I go, you do know those numbers don't equal. I mean, it's a simple math.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very simple math. So if somebody's working $20 an hour, that the gross income is approximately $40,000 a year. Yes, it is a little bit higher because you got those extra 2 weeks. So my thing is, whenever you're out there job searching, especially if you're military, is what is your make sure that you understand the difference between an hourly income and an annual income. Yep. And it's just a 2,000 factor.
Yep. Well, and I would say make sure you understand what your tax implications are, because at 40K, you're really only making 28 a year.
Yes.
So if you think that's a livable wage, like, we need to have a different conversation.
So you definitely want to work with somebody with like John here, with SkillBridge. If you're transitioning out, if you're an ex-military, if you're like myself, there's a veteran like John. He's a veteran as well, because we've been out for more than a year. So we've gone past that transition. But the thing is, if you know somebody who's looking to get out of the military, who's about to transition out, have them contact John. Because the thing is, if you're not being wise in your decision making, then the whole point is that the decisions that you're going to be making is going to probably be something that is not very conducive to what you're wanting to go to what you're wanting to gain. And I see John is probably agreeing with that.
Yep, absolutely.
So John, I do want to say thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. If you guys need anything, make sure you hit me up.
So all that information is going to be down in our show notes. And guys, until next time, be amazing.
Thanks for tuning in to another empowering episode of Business Amplified with Kevin A. Dunlap.
If you found value in today's insights, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share the podcast.
Keep amplifying your business. And remember, your success journey is our inspiration.
Until next time on Business Amplified, go out there and make your business thrive.